Motion controls were everywhere in the mid-2000s. When the Wii launched, it felt like the future of gaming had arrived. Wii Sports turned living rooms into tennis courts, and people were smashing their TV screens left and right. There was just something really magical about it. You weren't just pressing buttons, you were a part of the game. It felt more immersive than ever before. And the best part was everyone could play. I think I was like 3 when we got our first Wii, and even I understood how to play Mario Kart. That level of accessibility was just unheard of before now. Compare that to handing someone who's never gamed before a standard controller, and they're gonna think this thing is a spaceship control panel. But motion controls, completely intuitive. Give someone a plastic gun they can point at a screen, and they'll figure it out. Hand them a Wii remote to use as a tennis racket, and it just clicks. There's no huge learning curve or barrier to entry. That's what made it special. It broke down these barriers that had been in place for so long. And for a good while, it had everyone gaming regardless of their age. We had people playing sports, we had people dancing. Nintendo clearly had one design philosophy with the Wii, being standing still is just boring. You know what's super cool and epic? Moving around and being a part of the game. That's what players want. All this spiraled into a bunch of new technology very quickly. One notable example being the Xbox Kinect, which used cameras and depth sensors to track the player's movements real time. Unlike the Wii remote, you didn't have to hold anything. You were the controller. It could map up to 20 different joints on your body, detect the tilt of your head or bend in your knees. It could even recognize specific gestures. On top of that, it had a built-in microphone that let you control your games and navigate through menus using only your voice. This sprouted a bunch of new games that were unlike anything we had ever seen before. I mean, in theory, this thing puts the Wii to absolute shame. Kinect Sports was Microsoft's take on Wii Sports, and it let you sprint in place for a 100-meter dash, swing your arms for bowling, or even spike volleyballs, all without a controller. Kinect Adventures threw you onto a river raft, forcing you to physically dodge rocks and jump over obstacles in your living room. I mean, they even put Fruit Ninja on this thing. It was ambitious, it was flashy, it was like the future of gaming was in your living room for a while. While Microsoft was betting on full body tracking through the Kinect, Sony took a more precision first approach with the PlayStation Move. Released in 2010 along with the PlayStation Eye camera, the Move used controllers topped with glowing orbs that the camera could track in 3D space. Each controller had a gyroscope and an accelerometer to measure the orientation and motion of the controller, and when paired with the PlayStation Eye camera, you got extremely accurate one-to-one tracking. The big advantage here is you still had a controller in your hands. You could press buttons, pull triggers, use analog inputs just like before, which meant developers could make slightly more complex games like they did with the Wii, versus having to rely entirely on motion controls with the Xbox Kinect. One of the biggest showcases for this technology was Sports Champions, which was once again Sony's take on Wii Sports. But this game had a much higher skill ceiling due to the sheer amount of precision on these things. Playing table tennis or archery felt far more exact than on the Wii, and the system could even detect things like the spin of your virtual paddle or the draw of your bowstring. Games like The Fight, Lights Out push the realism angle, letting you throw punches with both hands while moving your character's head to dodge incoming blows. And there were a bunch of really creative uses like the game Tumble. It was a physics-based puzzle game where you carefully stacked blocks in 3D space, showing off just how precise this tracking could be. But when it released, the PlayStation Move was just kind of in an awkward position. It worked extremely well for what it was, but it didn't have that cultural explosion that the Wii had. And it also didn't have that futuristic wow factor like the Kinect. It was very technically impressive, but often overlooked by its counterparts. Records were being broken around the board, and video games were at an all-time high. Everyone was pushing out motion controls, and everyone was buying them. This made the mid-2000s era of gaming the prime for family gaming. To this day, it is unmatched. So if it was so great, where did it go? Sure, we have gyro controls on modern day gaming controllers, and Nintendo's still taking advantage of some of these things, but is the era of motion controls dead? What happened? These motion control games were so successful due to how immersive they were. I mean, people still love playing games like Wii Sports to this day. Unfortunately, there was one major problem during this prime of motion controls, which was just the technology. I mean, at the time, this stuff was like magic. And to be honest, it still kind of feels like that. They were very good at certain things, but they really struggled at other things. Let's take a look at just exactly how a Wii remote works. These things are extremely basic. They don't even have a gyro in them. All they had was an infrared sensor and an accelerometer. The infrared sensor on the controller would look for infrared light on that bar you would put on your TV, and then it was able to use the accelerometer not only for motion, but also to figure out what angle it was facing relative to the ground. This accelerometer wasn't as accurate as a gyroscope, but it was still able to serve the purpose it needed to for a lot cheaper. What's also really cool is everything was handled on the Wii Remote itself. The sensor bar didn't actually do anything. All that the cable it had was used for was to supply power so that it could power 2 infrared lights, which means in a pinch, you can literally light 2 candles below your TV and your Wii Remote should function like normal. Just a cool fun fact for you. The Wii Remote's effective use of relatively simple technology worked amazing for things like aiming a bat or playing mini golf. But when it came to anything that required a lot of accuracy, that's where this thing really started to struggle. This put huge limitations onto what games could actually benefit from motion controls. And since the Wii Remote can't detect any sort of difference between a long quick swing and just flicking the remote itself, anything that was supposed to accurately track your arm swings just didn't really work. Due to this, a lot of games just kind of Control-C, Control-V'd what was working, and innovation ended up coming to a halt pretty quickly. This all led to a lot of the hardcore gamers quickly losing interest and going back to more standard ways of gaming, while more casual audiences or people who didn't really play games at all before ended up losing interest and just stopping playing altogether. I mean, how many people do you know that got a Wii and it's just been sitting in a cabinet for years untouched? Motion controls also lost their appeal over time because sometimes you just kind of want to chill out. Think about coming home from a long day at work. You're tired and want to relax. Is the game of choice really going to be Just Dance? These high motion games also suffered from things like accessibility issues, so the audience just kind of grew smaller and smaller, especially since a lot of these titles were all or nothing with motion controls, so there wasn't an alternative way to play. This caused a lot of developers to just straight up prioritize speed over quality and kind of led to the whole rise of shovelware in gaming. Nintendo did their best to keep motion controls alive, but even though I loved it, the Wii U was a bit of a flop in terms of sales, and motion controls since then have just kind of gotten slowly phased out. Towards the end of the Wii's life and the start of the Wii U's life, Nintendo even started to fix a lot of the precision problems and things we talked about earlier with their new Motion Plus controllers. They even made an attachment you could plug into your Wii Remote to upgrade it to a motion controller, but sadly this also happened once motion controls were already on the decline, and so a lot of people just weren't willing to buy new controllers and accessories to play these new games, and a lot of people just straight up didn't even know they existed. I mentioned shovelware a little bit ago, and I think this might have also impacted the future of these types of devices. The Wii's early success created an absolute gold rush for developers, but instead of pushing hardware in new directions, the market was flooded with cheap, repetitive motion control games. Many of these were rushed to shelves with very little testing, recycling the same basic minigame concepts by just slapping some new art on them and calling it a day. Over time, this constant stream of low-quality releases just started to break trust with a lot of consumers. A lot of casual gamers became hesitant to buy titles that didn't have the Nintendo logo on them. There was just a severe lack of quality guarantee, and a lot of these games were honestly only sold because parents would take their kids to the bargain game aisle and tell them to pick out a game. Third-party developers with serious ideas for motion controls had a harder time standing out due to the sheer amount of games coming out, and publishers seemed to be less willing to take risks as the audience started to shrink. This wasn't unique to Nintendo. The Kinect and PlayStation Move had their fair share of these shallow, low-budget releases, but the Wii's massive fanbase with all of these casual gamers and especially a young audience really makes the Wii the most obvious example of this. So what happened to motion controls? Well, I can assure you they are still everywhere, just in a lot of different mediums. They've evolved. Nintendo's done their best at adapting motion controls to modern gaming with a much more hybrid approach to them. Especially with the Switch, there's been a ton of games that take advantage of the gyro controls found within the Joy-Con. Along with that, there's a bunch of party games like 1-2 Switch that are still able to be built entirely around motion controls. There's even been a bunch of games that have adopted things like gyro aiming, such as Splatoon. And games like Mario Odyssey are a great example about how a game can have motion controls to enhance the experience, but you don't necessarily need them. These early technologies are also influencing a huge market that is VR. Virtual reality probably wouldn't quite be where it is today if it weren't for these early motion control adopters. I mean, the PlayStation VR controllers have a shockingly similar resemblance to the PSVR 1 controllers, and they use a bunch of the same technology too. But right now, it's still facing a lot of problems that we mentioned in this video and a bunch of new problems that's similar to a lot of these older technologies we talked about. So if you want to see how VR is facing the exact same problems, you can click right here. And if you want to see a bunch more videos of failed revolutionizing in gaming, you can click right here. They're not actually failures, just things that didn't quite turn out how we expected. Anywho, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.